So during this section, we are going to be talking about the southern colonies. In this section, we will learn 4 different objectives. 1, explain the reasons for the establishment of Maryland. Explain the reasons for the establishment of the Carolinas and Georgia. Describe the relationship between different environments, different settlement patterns, and different economic systems in the southern colonies. And last but not least, explain the development of slave trade and the spread of slavery in the southern colonies. Next to these objectives in red, you guys will see the page number in which you guys can find these. I did this so that you guys can have a little bit of extra help when completing your 2.5 worksheet. Then here we also have our key terms, which you guys can also use for your guys' 2.5 worksheet. So the Act of Toleration was a law created in 1649 in Maryland that provided religious freedom for all Christians. Indigo, which was a plant used to make a valuable blue dye. Debtors, which is a person who cannot pay the debts that they owe. Slave codes, which are laws that control the lives of enslaved Africans and African Americans and deny them basic rights. Whenever we speak of basic rights, we mean basic human rights. Then, last but not least, we have racism, the belief that one race is superior to the other. So the first section of 2.5, we will be talking about Lord Baltimore's colony. So in 1632, Sir George Calvert persuaded King Charles I to grant him land for a colony in the Americas. Calvert had ruined his career in the Protestant England by becoming a Roman Catholic. Now he planned to build a colony where Catholics could practice their religion freely. So with Lord Baltimore's colony, settlers came to Maryland. Whenever they did arrive, it was in spring of 1634 with about 200 colonists near the Chesapeake Bay. With Lord Baltimore's colony, we will see that he created a colony to help Catholics escape religious persecution. But later on in its years, they did begin to accept other religions. One of the religions that they began accepting were Protestants. And here we will find and talk about the Act of Toleration. So the southern colonies were bordered on the west by the Appalachian Mountains and on the east of the Atlantic Ocean. So with this picture, there also comes a question underneath analyzing maps. So which of the southern colonies is the southernmost and which is the northernmost? You guys look at the picture, you guys will see that there are 2 blue arrows. So the southernmost arrow is pointing towards Georgia, therefore meaning that Georgia was the southernmost colony. Then the northernmost arrow, we will see that it is pointing towards Maryland, the northernmost colony. St. Mary's City was the first town built in Maryland, and here we can see that they have more modern day houses. Right now this looks like it is actually a monument going on. You see an information board here, trash can here, and also a map. So this area was actually preserved and what we can use today to go through and view and see how life was during these times. The next thing that we will be talking about is the settlement in the Carolinas and Georgia. South of Virginia and Maryland, English colonists settled in a region that they called the Carolinas. In 1663, a group of 8 English nobles received a grant of land from King Charles II. The settlement took place in 2 separate areas, one in the north and the other in the south. So here we'll talk about how the Carolinas developed differently. In North Carolina, which was developed in 1712, we will find 4 tobacco farmers. Then in South Carolina, which was settled in 1719, we will find rice and indigo farmers. We will also talk about how Georgia offers a second chance and was settled in 1732. And here we'll talk about the debtors. So in the book, you guys will read about the placement of Carolinas and Georgia. And right in the placement of this, they were settled. We will find the settlement of Charleston, which was established where two rivers meet for the Atlantic trade. And here we'll talk about a lot of trade happened here, mainly because the two rivers met and it was a perfect trade harbor. So the two regions that developed differently. The plantation system developed in the southern colonies because of the head right. The head right was a grant of land for each settler who came to a colony or for the person who paid to bring a settler. Wealthy settlers saw a chance to gain even more wealth by paying for farm workers and thus gaining ownership of large amounts of fertile coastal farmland. In this section, we will talk about the tidewater plantations on the coast, where there was warm weather, long growing seasons. And we'll also talk about the backcountry further inland, where we will see the Appalachian Mountains, rolling hills, and thick forests. Now, both of these regions, we will be talking about them from the 1600s to the 1700s with their development. In this picture, you will see enslaved Africans unloading rice barges. Enslaved Africans did make up the largest racial group in Southern Carolina, therefore meaning that there were more Africans than there were of any other race. The tidewater and the backcountry differed greatly in the terms of physical environment, population, government, and economy, and culture. So here we're going to analyze charts by answering the question of how did the environment affect farming in each region? Now with the tidewater region, that was located in the coastal plains, the terrain was a flat plain. Population was early English settlers and enslaved Africans, with the economy of a large-scale plantation farming of cash crops for export. Pay attention to the blue arrow, and we'll see that there is the answer to our question. The Tidewater colony had a perfect location for farming, with the flat plain being that they were able to grow their cash crops with the large scale, like it says, for the economy. Then on the backcountry, which was located in the Appalachian Mountains and the foothills, the terrain was hilly and mountainous. Population was the Scotch-Irish, poorer English migrants and Germans, with the economy of a small-scale subsistence farming and fur trade. So, in the backcountry, if you look at the blue arrow, the terrain was hilly and mountainous. Therefore, it did make it harder to farm. So the slave trade expands. In the early years, Africans in the English colonies included free people of indentured servants as well as enslaved persons. During the 1600s, even Africans who were enslaved enjoyed some privileges. The first enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia in 1619. For the next 50 years, since the African population was small, the status of Africans in the colony was not clearly established. Some enslaved Africans purchased their freedom. Several Africans during the 1600s, such as Anthony Johnson, became successful property owners. In South Carolina, some enslaved Africans worked without supervision as cowboys, herding cattle to market. And during this section, we'll talk about the enslavement of Africans and their slave traders. We'll talk about selling across the Middle Passage, in which is known as a transatlantic slave trade route. And many of these sellers did choose to follow this route in the 1700s. We will also talk about the human rights, which were often ignored, being the slave codes and racism. So here we will see a flyer talking about slaves. Okay, so at the top it says Charleston, or actually it says Charlestown, July 24th of 1769, to be sold on Thursday, the 3rd day of August next, a cargo of 94 prime healthy Africans, consisting of 39 men, 15 boys, 24 women, and 16 girls, just arrived in the Brigantine Dembia, Francis Bear, Mafter, from Sierra Leone by David and John Deeds. Planters in the southern colonies relied on the slave trade to maintain a supply of plantation labor. So we're going to summarize how this poster presents enslaved Africans. So pretty much this poster is saying we have some property for you guys. We have this many men, boys, women, and girls that can be bought at this auction. All right, so in the slave trade, we will also talk about the economies of the colonial regions. So the economies of the 3 colonial regions depended on different resources. So in New England, we will see that 13% was wood products, 17% was livestock, 44% dried fish and well oil, and 26% was other. In the middle colonies, we'll see that 5% was iron, 5% wood, 17% other, and 73% grain. Then, in the southern colonies, we will see that 7% was indigo, 12% other, 48% tobacco, 20% rice, and 13% bread, flour, and grain, which was not rice. Then here we also talk about the estimate of colonists' average physical wealth. And here in physical wealth, we will be talking about the land value, financial assets, livestock value, servants and slaves, as well as other. So in New England, it was about 38, I believe that means euros, or in 2013 in US dollars, it was 7,900. Okay, then the middle colonies, we have 51 euros, which in 2013 in US dollars was 10,608. Then in the southern colonies was 137 euros, which in 2013 in US dollars was 28,502. So here with this chart, we're going to analyze what 2 resources did the southern colonies possess in great abundance that increased their wealth over that of New England and in the middle colonies. So if we look at the southern colonies, their 2 biggest possessions that they had were the 48% of tobacco and 20% rice. So if we look over here, grains for middle colonies was only 73, and then we had 44% dried fish and well oil in New England. So with just rice alone, it made the 20%. So therefore, if we look at the middle colonies, their 73% grain included bread, flour, grains, rice, pretty much anything that can be made of grain. And then in the New England colonies, being that they only had wood, livestock, dried fish and well oil, and other. Right, and that's all we do have for this lesson. I do hope that this lesson did help you guys with your guys' worksheets. You guys can always email me or send me a message for further assistance. Everyone have a great rest of your day.